You're right, there's been tremendous change in the last 10 years, but even though it's been 10 years, I think we're still honestly relatively still in the early innings of where the industry is ultimately going to end up. I think in the last couple of years in particular, there's been a big movement in a positive direction and against a few sort of pivot points. One is a movement to advertisers buying against content and instead buying more against audiences, particularly underpinned by quality first-party deterministic data. The second is the growth in addressable advertising to help advertisers with a more holistic set of media solutions down the consumer purchase funnel. That said, there's a ton of work to be done. I think in the back end, the retooling of engine rooms, both with publishers on the sell side and agencies on the buy side, in terms of how the technology change needs to take place, incentive models, org structures, policies, processes, etc. It's that sort of dirty work in the engine room that becomes crucial in order to enable the industry to, at scale, be able to go into a sort of cross-screen, multi-screen future, and also make TV more attributable. So you're right, ton of work in the last 10 years, but there's a lot of work ahead of us still.
What does the growth of streaming mean for a business like Comcast Advertising?
So for Comcast Advertising, streaming is critical, of course, to all of our futures. We're one of the most scale players in the market in terms of our streaming inventory and our quality streaming inventory. In fact, at Effective, one of our portfolio companies, about 85% of that inventory is on the big screen, which is really, really important. Here's the way I think about it. I think there's a bit of a false narrative in the market at the moment that's getting pushed in terms of there being an either-or trade-off between spend money on traditional linear or spend it on streaming TV, and I think that's fundamentally wrong. Ultimately, advertisers are looking to reach their audiences wherever they're viewing, and that is, as you know, across an increasing sort of fragmented distribution landscape. We've done studies, I know others have as well, is linear TV is still the most scaled way to reach consumers on video. And it's the foundation of many media campaigns for those looking to reach video. However, our view is ultimately streaming is a critical component of those media campaigns. So the work we've done shows that we think you should allocate about 20 to 30% of your budget towards streaming. And actually, we showed that you get about 2.5x better reach to light TV viewing households through streaming, which makes intuitive sense. So this narrative, I think, between it's an either or is the wrong one. The answer is it needs to be both. And ultimately, how do buyers and sellers work together to better plan and better optimize campaigns and manage incremental reach and frequency across all those distribution endpoints, both traditional distribution endpoints and streaming.
So you're one of the biggest providers of TV ad tech with the Freewheel business. You acquired Beeswax a little while ago.
Yep.
How is that portfolio evolving to keep up with the growth of streaming?
Sure. So Freewheel is, you're right, it's made up of a number of acquisitions that are now sort of working in concert as one. Freewheel has a critical role for the ecosystem, which is an ecosystem player, and its goal is to work in an interoperable and collaborative way to help buyers and sellers ultimately reduce friction out of the system for the new TV ecosystem. And there's a few ways they're doing that. One is solving for supply unification. In simple terms, that means how do we enable buyers and sellers to plan, to deliver ads, optimize ads, report ads, and bill on them in a single way, single impression goal across both linear and streaming TV. That's one. Two is really around demand unification. How do you enable programmatic demand to compete with direct sold demand and other sources in a sort of unified way across that unified supply pool? And three, how do you better enable buyers and sellers to transact against audiences using various identifiers out there against the backdrop of a lot of that sort of complexity in the identity and identity world. So we see Freewheel as a sort of critical asset to help accelerate. Back to your original question, if we made a ton of progress in the last 10 years, Freewheel we think is a critical asset for the industry to be able to sort of break through on that supply and demand unification. and looking forward to working with the industry to do that.
So I guess the other real driver of progress, most people would say, is collaboration. And you're involved in lots of the most interesting collaborative endeavors and undertakings in the industry. Why is collaboration so important in your view? Which of these collaborative ventures are you most excited by at present?
So Comcast has been really consistent over multiple years about our view is we believe that for the ecosystem to be healthy and to grow, we have to collaborate closely together. And then we've been consistent in that. We've been consistent in that in terms of putting points on the board and sort of walking the talk in that respect. So, one example may be that we incubated Blockgraph as part of Freewheel, and then we spun it out of Freewheel in partnership with Paramount and also with Charter, because our view was it's better to be an operating framework for the industry versus as part of Freewheel is one example. The other is the leadership role we play alongside other distributors with Go Addressable, where we know if we're going to make it simpler for advertisers to transact at scale on addressable inventory, then we need to better standardize how that process, how the addressable sort of workflow works, as an example. A third example would be in measurement. We are taking a position that we think a healthy future for measurement is one where there are multiple currencies that can be leveraged. To do that, we believe in stimulating competition and stimulating innovation. And so we work with various measurement partners to data enable them with sort of aggregator set-top box viewing data with the goal of solving for cross-screen measurement. So those are just sort of three examples of the position that Comcast Advertising takes and why it's important that ultimately we think when the tide rises, all boats will ride with it. And that's where you'll continue to see us making investments in the future.
So final question, we're heading into the midterms. I think every analyst is expecting a bonanza of political investment and spending. How are you getting ready to support the market during this time? It's going to be critically important in terms of the performance of the overall market during the entire year.
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting seeing what's happening in the political advertising at the moment. I think I'll get my data slightly wrong, but the spend in this year's midterms is going to be I think 2.5, 3.5 times bigger than in 2018. And in fact, I think in this year, we're going to see numbers that are going to be north of what was spent in the presidential general election. And so from our standpoint, political advertising is obviously crucial to our business. We see a few things happening, and it's really aligned with what we're seeing more broadly in the advertising market. So firstly, there's an increase in dollars moving towards CTV. We think, again, about 25 or 30% of budgets from political buyers will go into streaming this year. That's wonderful for the industry. It's wonderful for Comcast Advertising based on the position we have there. And we're working with our political buyers to help them buy in a cross-screen way and help them better sort of optimize delivery around reach and frequency across linear and streaming. The second is I think more dollars are going to be executed behind programmatic pipes. That's something that we work really closely with Freewheel. And then third, addressability is really, really important in political for reasons that you would expect. So overall, I think political advertisers are incredibly sophisticated. They're a bit of a bellwether for, I think, where sort of next generation advertising executions go. And it's interesting if you look at the backdrop of where the economy is overall, political just remains incredibly resilient relative to sort of other sectors which are struggling a little bit right now.